3 out of 4, here we go. Today's look at Brave Eirika. This one's actually one of the more interesting ones on my initial impressions. A little bit overdue, but there is definitely some wow factors in this one. Let's do it.
Let the lesson begin.
What's up guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is going to focus on Brave Eirika's in-depth analysis. Just as we've covered Marianne and Gatekeeper before, I am going to do my due diligence on Brave Eirika and finally Brave Marth to round it out. So far, my opinion on the CYL units hasn't really changed too much. I think basically what I said in the first video a week ago or so remains true. I'm standing by most of that. There have definitely been some more interesting things that have come my way, either through seeing them through replays or what people have shared with me and such. So yeah, today's video is Brave Eirika. I do actually really like this outfit. I think it fits really well. And it's kind of like the Queen Camilla, like Brave Camilla outfit. Like I really like that one as well. So feel like this one is awesome too, in a way. But yeah, let's jump into this and I'll give you my thorough opinion of Brave Eirika. Before we do, smash the like button, sub if you haven't already, always helps out the channel, gives it reach, and keeps me making content. Love you guys for doing so. Alright, so first up is Brave Eirika, of course, her stat spread and what her skills are. Now we did briefly cover this in the general analysis, but I want to go over it again. Her stat spread is, as you might expect, pretty modern at 40-42 offensive stat spread. That's really good, but we're going to talk into why that's actually really important. It has mostly to do with the preference skills and such. But essentially, Eirika is a Blue Lance Cav, and if you know how I generally feel about Blue Lance Cavs, I feel pretty indifferent with them. But Eirika has a lot going for her, which I feel will make her last in the long term. Among the fact that, you know, we get those hero fests, we get the weapon refines on CYL units, so she's here to stay. And if you do invest in her, you should feel pretty comfy, confident that it's going to be a good unit in the long term of playing the game. So to go over all of this stuff down here and exactly how much she brings to the table, you have a character who has a slaying weapon, has effectiveness against armor and cav, which again will play a pretty solid role here. You have 5 tall stats as expected. You have damage reduction, okay, on the first hit of your enemy. And on top of that, if she like is the engager, she player phases, she has a self null follow-up effect. So that's pretty stacked on a weapon. Definitely really good. So yeah, on top of that, we have our Moonlight Bangle, which has Canto, which is great. We have a secondary effect that says, no, you can't deny my special acceleration. So it's kind of like Violet's effect, Violet's weapon. And on top of that, she does an additional extra damage when the specials go off. So again, really good synergy amongst her, basically her weapon and her preference B skill. But on top of that, she has the stat spread to really make all of this work. First up, I want to kind of like talk about her base kit and why it like really doesn't need to change very much. So you see here Eirika's running, like the one thing I've changed on her is Luna changed to Moonbow. And the reason this is actually better, and it's been simmed out and tested, I'll show you that near the end of the vid, is you fire off 2 Moonbows, which is obviously better than 1 Luna. It's just more damage, just comes out to that way. Remember that Moonlight Bangle gives you additional damage on that special, so 2 Moonbows fired off is better than 1 Luna, and that's essentially what this is. So this is a pre-charged Moonbow. And then because her special cannot really be denied in any form, she's going to engage, Moonbow, get an enemy full attack, which charges Moonbow again and fires off a second one. So basically it's actually pretty solid. You don't really need to reinvent the wheel besides really just adding some damage, like just changing out the special and running it that way. Of course, if you do choose to run Eirika like this, I would recommend treating her in a fashion like a similar way to how Regan is run in Astra Season. In fact, Eirika's closest similarity is literally Regan, but you can bless her in user on either season. In fact, I think on Astra Season she can complement Regan, and on Light Season you can essentially have yourself a Blue Lance Regan, which is again very strong considering most of the threats there. The only like problem might be something like hell with guard bearing, maybe, but I wouldn't really worry about it too much because she's not common enough for that to matter. But essentially her stat spread lends really well to the sort of playstyle of hit and run, same as like Regan. Next up is if you want to like do a bit of optimization, and attack IV works really well for her. Speed isn't bad either, but I think attack is just a bit better. And then switching Surging Sparrow to something like attack speed catch just to add additional damage and speed to her over Surge Sparrow. Just generally it's going to give you more throughput. Another thing you can do is run her with Galeforce because specials cannot be denied. She lends really well to this sort of strat. She has damage reduction, so if she takes hits, it's okay. And the only like unfortunate thing is she doesn't get like bonus damage off of the Moonlight Bangle secondary effect, but this ultimately doesn't really matter. And honestly, you can run her in like Galeforce strats, or you can run her as a hit and run nuker type of character. What I want to go over here is a cool example provided to, a visual kind of cool example provided to me by Fortune Tom. So thank you, Fortune Tom, for providing the amount of screenshots here to kind of get us thinking about Eirika. So as you can see in the left there, that's a team you might run into. Fortunately for us, that's a single dancer, but it's definitely not a team you want to enemy phase because there is a Wedding Catria there. You got Legendary Claude, you have Reinhardt, and potentially Brammy as well, all causing shenanigans that you don't really want to end turn against this team. You will probably die. Like most tanks will generally die there because Wedding Catria will set up these really annoying like brave effects that will shred most tanks. So you got to run some sort of player phase strategy. Galeforce are pretty good for that, but in this particular example, we have Eirika used as the initiator onto Eldigan, and because of Eirika's really good throughput of her special and her B skill and just all the synergy in her kit, she's able to actually nuke Eldigan from the front line and then retreat. And because of that, and no dancer on the enemy team besides the frontline Eldigan, who's actually pretty bulky and sturdy overall, you can essentially run out and then clean up at that point using Eirika herself or other units like Uller or Freya in this case. So it's like a very simple example, but it really does showcase the power of Eirika and how most other units aren't really going to be able to do that combined with Kanto and like the melee cavalry reach. So again, thank you to Tom for sending this sample screenshots. Very simple example, but it does show you what you can do with Eirika, and you don't really need to go for like crazy amount of merges or anything to make this work, which I will show you in a moment. Before we get into sims though, I want to talk about a potential third build that you could consider for those of you that have really invested in Eirika, which is honestly just a distant counter like tank build. And at first I didn't really think this is that good, and I'm still not super convinced of it, but there are definitely some things which can make this work. And the reason for that is because she already has a solid attack and speed spread. She has slaying, she has effectiveness, she has damage reduction. And this damage reduction isn't like, it's not locked into any like player phase or anything like that. She just straight up has damage reduction, which is very, very unique for cavalry units in general. So you have a very powerful potential like tank unit here that you can use that's also really good on player phase. You can essentially do all the things that you were already doing with Eirika, but you could actually use her as an enemy phase tank with Kanto, with hit and run, and you can actually do some sort of playstyle where you go in, snipe something, and position out to just basically tank the rest of the team with some sort of support behind her, which could be like Lancina, for example, or NY Valoria, something like that. And I think this could actually work pretty well because, again, damage reduction is unique. Her special can't really be denied if you keep the B skill, which you probably should. And of course, she gets extra damage off of that as well. So it's really cool. I really like this. The only unfortunate thing, of course, is no null C and no follow-up. The null follow-up self-effect is unfortunately only on player phase. But generally speaking, like this is pretty good solid stat spread at high investment. This is without any mythic blessings, so it actually looks even better once you consider adding in those mythics. And if you go high investment, I could definitely see this working. Just food for thought though. It's not going to be the focus of the video, of course. So let's jump into simulations, guys, and why Eirika is actually as strong as she is. So before we get into this, I want to show the candidates and some of the cool stuff that comes with Eirika. The Eirika on the left here is using Light Season Blessings, and I'm just going to assume again that the enemy is Dark Season, just to make things as simple as possible. Mostly base kit, but running the Moonbow build with Cook and Pulse, and giving her just Gentle Dream buffs, which would be 3 to all stats, and Flower of Joy with Peony. So you want to line that up. Pretty easy condition to meet. Could be even better, like you could run Attack Speed Link, which I think works really well. Like you can literally buff more, and that's even better case scenario. The enemies will be at +1 as well to keep things equal, running like very tanky sort of builds. So defense IVs, high flowers, and defense provided through Knot. So as you can see, again, pause it if it's a little bit confusing for you, but we're going to have Gustav as a candidate. We're going to have Bector as a candidate with attack defense form 3, defense super boon, 15 flowers as a second candidate. And finally, we have Fallen Edelgard with her transform active, ideal fully active, bonfire, +1, again with defense IV. So again, these are like common threats you might actually run into while playing AR, and it's important to consider Eirika in those scenarios. Again, her +1 plus attack is the way I'm going to go about this, but keep in mind that at higher merges for the foe, things get a little bit like crazier or harder, where you might want more drive attack, potentially more stats like defense and such. So it comes down to pretty close combat on these sims, but it is still fairly surprising. As you can see, Eirika actually just wins against all these +1 foes who are fairly defense IV or fairly stacked. Now, a lot of these are pretty close, where Eirika either barely survives by a few points, in the case of like Edel, or and like Gustav, like barely survives, meaning she's like under 20 health, or barely misses the kill and then dies through like their QR effect. So like on Bector or Gustav, who are also firing off like a bonfire, a second bonfire. So it gets pretty close if you miss a kill, where the enemy will definitely get the kill, but it's still impressive nonetheless that she can do this. And there aren't really that many like units in the game that can straight up just kill like against weapon triangle disadvantage, or just kill these like units in general. Like there's not that many in the game that can do this, and it really does lend well to Moonlight Bangle, the Moonbow build, and just in general like no special denial, plus her great offensive stat spread. So if you're going to use Eirika, she's actually pretty solid as a cleanup unit, as a hidden run unit, potentially a Galeforce unit, and even a tank unit at like really high investment. So if you like Eirika, she's solid, guys. There's not really much more to say other than just good unit in a good role, which is exactly what Eirika is, and she's better than basically all of her competition. Like Eirika is, I'd say, hands down the best blue lance cav in the game. Maybe not the tankiest, so there's still definitely going to be some like defined niches here, but for the most part, very good unit, solid investment, and yeah, that basically covers Brave Eirika, folks. So last one will be Brave Marth. This one is a bit harder to talk about, but we'll talk about it when we get to it. And with that being said, if you enjoyed the video, give it a smash on like button. So if you haven't already, let me know what you think of Brave Eirika in the comments below. And that's it for me. If you love the content, consider subscribing on Patreon in the description below. That shows me that you love the content. And of course, I'll keep doing what I do here. Love you all. See you in the next one. Peace.
It's over.